The European Union has declared the following items to be terrorism and has demanded that the Internet Archive remove them immediately or be completely suspended from being accessible in countries in the EU. They are as follows: Alice in Wonderland, Peter Rabbit, Edgar Allan Poe, several works, A Tale of Two Cities, the Bible, and millions of other public domain books released under Project Gutenberg. They have also declared multiple other archives within the Internet Archive as terrorism and demanded that they be removed from being accessible immediately. CSPAN. Yeah, CSPAN, the Smithsonian, and all music, all recordings by the Grateful Dead. This is the stupidest thing I've seen in a very long time. I'm going to read a blog post here. My apologies for those watching the video version. I don't have the video of the blog post, but you can get it over at blog.archive.org if you want to follow along. I was having some technical difficulties here. But I'm just going to read part of this to you because I feel it is really important. And I quote, "The European Parliament is set to vote on legislation that would require websites that host user-generated content to take down material reported as terrorist content within 1 hour." That's just a dumb idea. "We have some examples of current notices sent to the Internet Archive that we think illustrate very well why this requirement would be harmful to the free sharing of information and freedom of speech that the European Union pledges to safeguard. In the past week, this isn't like over the past decade or something, or even the past year, the last week, the Internet Archive has received a series of email notices from French Internet Referral Unit, the French IRU, falsely identifying hundreds of URLs on archive.org as, and I quote, terrorist propaganda. At least one of these mistaken URLs was also identified as terrorist content in a separate takedown notice sent under the authority of the French government's L'Office Central de Lutte contre, can't say all the rest of the words, which is funny because my daughter is fluent in French, but yet I cannot pronounce most of those words. My apologies to French people out there. The 1 hour requirement essentially means that we would need to take reported URLs down automatically and do our best to review them after the fact. It would be bad enough if the mistaken URLs in these examples were for a set of relatively obscure items on our site, but the French IRU's lists include some of the most visited pages on archive.org and materials that obviously have high scholarly and research value. See a summary below with specific examples. And then they give multiple examples. They say that they've got at least 550 archive.org URLs were sent in by this request from the European Union to have it taken down. Project Gutenberg, the Smithsonian, some animated public domain cartoons. It's just ridiculous. It goes on and on. It is absolutely insane. Again, these examples are only a few of the some 550 falsely identified URLs. The erroneous reports continue to be sent to us by the French IRU. The most recent example was sent a day prior to this post. The OCLCTIC, which is the acronym for the French words I couldn't pronounce earlier, emailed us a takedown notice a few days ago, April 8th, identifying an item making commentary on the Quran as including provocation of acts of terrorism or apology for such acts. The report stated that blocking procedures may be implemented against us if we did not remove the content in 24 hours. This URL was also on one of the lists that the French IRU reported to us. Thus, we are left to ask, how can the proposed legislation that would require a 1 hour turnaround time be realistically said to honor freedom of speech if these are the types of reports that are currently coming from the EU law enforcement and designated government reporting entities? It is not possible for us to process these reports using human review within a very limited time frame like 1 hour. Are we simply to take what's reported as terrorism as face value and risk the automatic removal of things like the primary collection page for all books on archive.org, such as the Project Gutenberg page? This is pure insanity. So here's kind of my thoughts on this. There is very likely some automated detection going on that has run amok. Either that or someone really doesn't like the Grateful Dead, which, I mean, I dig the Grateful Dead, but I guess I understand if someone just really doesn't like the Grateful Dead. You know, there's some bands I really don't like either. And do I want to classify them as terrorism? Perhaps on my ears, but otherwise I probably think not so much. But when it comes to things like the Bible, they literally classify. This is so just to be clear, this came from the French IRU, but it was hold on a second, let me make sure I get this right. This was sent in via Europol's EU Internet Referral Unit, which came from the email address at europol.europa.eu. So this is kind of instigated by by an agency within France, but sent in and officially designated as action from the European Union. So it is European Union wide. But when you're talking about the Bible, they literally just said the Bible is terrorism. You have to take it down. You can't have it online. Alice in Wonderland and Peter friggin' Rabbit. I mean, who put these procedures in place? It's ridiculous. C-SPAN and the Smithsonian, holy smokes. And this is just some of them. I mean, there's a ton. I highly recommend you guys go check out the list at blog.archive.org. It is absolutely preposterous, and asinine is one of the nicest words I can put to it. So we have a problem here. The laws within the European Union have been trending very, very rapidly towards anti-freedom of speech to a ridiculous degree, to the point now where they are essentially declaring illegal Peter Rabbit and the Bible and the Smithsonian and the Grateful Dead. I mean, once those are declared illegal, what's left to be legal? What's left that's not terrorism? I mean, if Peter Rabbit is terrorism, everything's terrorism. So Winnie the Pooh is next, I'm assuming. I'm assuming that we're going after Pooh Bear next. And maybe all Disney Works. All Disney and DreamWorks films. Let's remove everything DreamWorks. Shrek is definitely terrorism. We got to outlaw that. So anyone who has like YouTube has trailers for Shrek. We definitely need to do a takedown notice to YouTube to remove all Shrek trailers because it promotes terrorism, guys. Terrorism. So what do we do here? I mean, because the EU is trending in a very dangerous direction. I mean, already there are many, many laws on the books within the EU where you're not allowed to say certain things or you go to jail. Just simply saying things and not even threatening things, just disparaging someone else, you go to jail. Just simply being kind of a jerk on the internet can land you in jail within parts of the EU. And now they're doing what is, and I recognize what I'm about to say is inflammatory. I recognize that it is an intense thing that I'm about to say, but the similarities are just too much to ignore. They are essentially doing a modern day version of a book burning in the EU. This is when countries in Europe are declaring that novels, works of music, works of culture are illegal and acts of terrorism and must be either destroyed or made not available. That's a book burning. I can't think of what else that would be. They're trying to make sure that the populace of Europe does not have access to content that they don't want them to have access to. And it is far reaching and ridiculous. Now, again, a lot of this might be an automated system that was just going through archive.org and going, I don't like this, and click, make these all reported and declare them all terrorism, right? That's entirely possible. Bad artificial intelligence run amok. Entirely possible. It might also just be one or two cranky folks that are just like, I don't like the Grateful Dead. That's terrorism. I'm sure the Moody Blues is next. And holy smokes, Albert King, he's coming down for terrorism. And Frank Sinatra's really got it coming. But even in that sort of scenario, we've got a real problem. Because there's no way for this to end well when a government has the ability to outlaw Peter Rabbit. If that is even possible, if it's something that a government even has the ability to think about doing, to outlaw Peter Rabbit and the Bible, it's not going to end well. We can look back through history, and every time something like this happens, it goes bad in a quick hurry. So we need to make sure that this isn't even possible. If it's possible for France or Germany or any EU member state or just the European Union collective organization as a whole to say Peter Rabbit, Alice in Wonderland, and A Tale of Two Cities are terrorism and no one can read them anymore, then it's broken. Then the whole government needs to be tossed out and start over, because that's beyond busted. There's no way to fix that. There's no fixing that. That's going down a road that we do not want to go down. That's piles of books and lighting them on fire and then waging war against the world and committing genocide. We're literally right there at the edge of that, and that is horrifying. That's horrifying. Now, again, I'd like to give people the benefit of the doubt and say this is maybe some sort of an automated procedure that labeled all of these things as terrorism, right? So let's say we could fix that. The problem still stands that it's something that can be done by the governments and the governmental agencies within the EU. And as long as they can be done, we've got a problem. So we as citizens, and I'm not part of the EU, I'm sitting over here in America where it's still legal to read Peter Rabbit. Thank God. However, when I look over there across the pond at my friends, and I've got a lot of friends and family living in Europe right now, and I don't see a way out of this other than two options here. One, the populace simply has to accept that they're only allowed to read what the government classifies as okay to read. If they can't, if the government says Peter Rabbit's terrorism, no Peter Rabbit for their kids, right? If the government says the King James version of the Holy Bible is terrorism, well, I guess they just have to outlaw all the religions that make use of or reference it, because that's just the next step, and everyone just needs to be okay with that. Or the populace of Europe needs to say, no, the European Union has run amok to a ridiculous degree. All of these laws, including Articles 11 and 13, which is a whole different issue, need to be just stricken, and the European Union should have zero power and control in any way, shape, or form over the internet. This has been an ongoing issue. This isn't like an isolated incident. And we're not just talking about access to books and music and art and literature and culture here. We're also talking about access to practical information. For example, a couple of years ago, there was a vote happening in Spain where part of Spain wanted to break off from the rest of Spain, right? Well, the main government of Spain told Google that they did not want anyone to know where the polling locations were, where the places were that people were allowed to go and vote. So Google removed that information. Google blocked applications that allowed people to see where they need to go to vote. This sort of thing happens in China. This sort of thing happens all over the place where people are being blocked from getting information by the government via the internet. This is a problem. It's not just simple censorship. It is complete and total control over a population. You're controlling their art, their music, their culture, their literature, the Smithsonian and CSPAN, the access to public discourse information, access to polling information. I mean, all of it is now being heavily modified, heavily censored, and heavily controlled by the governments within the European Union. That is a huge, huge problem. Huge, mammoth, extreme. This is trending in a very, very bad way. Normally on this show, we like to keep things pretty light. We like to talk about how awesome things are. However, to my friends in the EU, I'm sorry, but you are in bad shape over there, my friends. This is not going to end well. I really, really hope that the people within each of the countries within the EU can stand up and say, no more of this. All of these laws, and there's a lot of them, need to be stricken, and the EU itself and the governments within the EU need to pass laws that make it illegal for the EU and the individual member governments to modify in any way any content passed over the internet. And I understand that there are some realistically good reasons to allow a governmental agency to have some form of control over what information is passed through the internet for public safety. Honestly, allowing terrorists to communicate with each other is yes, I get it. We need to be able to modify and censor these sorts of things. However, not at the cost of taking away Peter Rabbit. I'm sorry. That's just a bridge too far, and you cannot label Peter Rabbit as a terrorist, despite the fact that some of the later stories in the Peter Rabbit books are just difficult to read. I like some of the early Peter Rabbit stuff, but any of you with kids who have read like the full works of Beatrix Potter and all that, you know what I'm talking about. It kind of goes off the rails near the end. Anyway. As much as I don't want to read some of those stories again, labeling them as terrorism is ridiculous. And there is no fix for it other than a complete removal of all of those powers entirely, completely and utterly from the European Union. The governments of Europe have proven time and time again that they cannot ever be trusted with being the censor, the moderator of the content for their populace, because it ends up in book burnings, which is exactly what they're doing right now, and it is absolutely ridiculous. Also, what's ridiculous is the way it's being done. The fact that the Internet Archive is being asked, and this literally from another article over on Tech Dirt. Is this from Tech Dirt? Yeah, this was reported on at techdirt.com. These came in. I'm going to read this here. The Internet Archive has a few staff members that process takedown notices from law enforcement who operate in the Pacific time zone. Most of the falsely identified URLs mentioned here, including the report from the French government, were sent to us in the middle of the night between midnight and 3 a.m. Pacific. And all of the reports were sent outside of the business hours of the Internet Archive. All of the reports, not some of them, all of them. The 1 hour requirement essentially means that we would need to take reported URLs down automatically and do our best to review them after the fact. That is ridiculous. That's absolutely just, that is asinine. I don't know any other way to look at it. To any member of any of the governments of Europe who voted to allow these laws, to any member of the EU who voted to allow these laws, or who had any part in instituting these laws, you did a bad job. You just plain did a bad job. It's entirely possible that your heart was in the right place, that you could have been just trying to make the internet a safer place, that you might have been thinking, I want to get rid of terrorism. I want to make hate speech go away. Your heart could have been in the right place. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt for that. I'm going to assume that you have a loving, kind soul and you're trying to do good. But you screwed up. You screwed up real bad. You forgot to read your history books first, and you need to undo all the bad things that you just did. All of them. It is absolutely ridiculous. To the rest of you, should this continue to get worse, I hear America's real nice this time of year. This episode of the Lunduke Show is brought to you in part by Lulzbot 3D printers. Beautiful 3D printers made in the beautiful state of Colorado, right here in the USA, where you can still read Beatrix Potter. Harry Potter, geez, that's got to be next. They've got to outlaw Harry Potter next. Beatrix Potter and Peter Rabbit, such books are still legal here in America, where you can buy amazing 3D printers from the good folks at Lulzbot. You can find out more at lulzbot.com. They've got 3 3D printer lines, a little one for the mini, they got the mid one for the Taz, and they got this big pro one now. It is glorious. Now, I haven't used their big new pro one, but I want to. I don't have a flat surface big enough for it right now, though. But I want it. Anyway, check it out over at lulzbot.com. And of course, you can go over to lunduke.com for all the information about this show to help support this show. Much appreciated to all of you. Also, you'll notice I haven't shaved in a while. My kid was recently in the NICU after he was born, and I stopped shaving while I was spending my nights in the NICU, because who's got time to shave when you're spending a week in the hospital with your baby, right? And now that I just haven't shaved in a while, I just haven't kept it up. Like, I just haven't gotten back in and started shaving again. Theoretically, I will. My son thinks it's cool. My older son. I've got a 3-year-old son. My 8-year-old daughter just thinks my face looks a little dirty. This morning, she's like, "Huh, you still not shaving, huh, Daddy?" So we'll see if she pressures me into shaving sometime soon. All right, that's all I got for today. I wish you and yours a very glorious day. Go forth and read Peter Rabbit while you can.